Gamelab de Barcelona, junto a los compañeros de gen16.com y eurogamer.es, hemos tenido el honor de charlar un rato con uno de los creadores de aventuras gráficas más originales de la historia, Lowe. Creador de una de las sagas más fructíferas del género, Leisure Suit Larry, y tras 18 años de éxito, se retiró del mundo de los videojuegos en parte dado al cambio de tendencias dentro del sector. Ahora, gracias al proyecto de recaudación de fondos a base de donativos Kickstarter, vuelve de la mano de Replay Games para ofrecernos una versión actualizada de su clásico.
I'm sorry to say that that's true. Yeah. For many years, I kidded that I was the world's oldest living game designer, but now it's actually true. I think there's no one left who's as old as I am. I have games older than most of your viewers.
Your attention, please. Anyone wishing to spend next week humping the captain, please report immediately to the ship's lounge.
I retired in 1998 and got out of video games completely and just enjoyed my retirement. Learned to play golf badly and play music, play saxophone in a big band. But a couple years ago when Paul Trow obtained the rights to the Leisure Suit Larry games that I created, he asked me if I would be interested in bringing them up to date, making them more modern, look to have a new graphics look, to have voiceovers, to add music, to add better animation, more story, more puzzles, do everything, but basically keep the old game around, but to build a great new game on top of it. And that's what we're planning to do. My advice to anyone wanting to get into video games is do it 30 years ago. It was a lot easier. I think people won't realize, but when we released a game, there were people lined up waiting for it. It was a big deal. Today, when 100 games come out every day, it's very, very difficult to get your head above water and to be made known. It's very difficult with almost 1 million apps now in the App Store, and 300,000 games. It's very hard to get your recognition and to be noticed. But so I think in many ways in the old days was much easier. On the other hand, a huge successful game like Larry 1 was a big hit, and it sold 350,000 copies originally in its first incarnation, and that was a huge hit back then. It went on to sell millions afterwards, but today, to have a big hit, you really need a lot of sales and a lot of publicity. The Kickstarter campaign was really interesting. I assumed that we would throw a page up on the internet and money would just come streaming in, but I was wrong. What really happened was we put the page up and then the work started. Paul Trow, the head of Replay Games, did an amazing job of keeping the site updated, forcing me to do videos and updates. We changed reward tiers, we added rewards, we added ideas, we kept things going. In the course of 30-day campaign, we had 23 updates. So that tells you it's not a trivial task. And it's also not an easy way to raise funds anymore. Tim Schafer blew the doors off the place. It was exciting and explosive. But most of the games who are proposed on Kickstarter fail. And it's not a trivial task to raise funds that way anymore.
From the demented mind of Lowe in cooperation with Replay Games, it's the original Leisure Suit Larry in the land of the lounge lizards. Reloaded.
I think Kickstarter is a wonderful way to fund projects because the public gets to vote on what they want, the kind of game that they want, and by funding it directly, they have input into what they want to see, as opposed to a publisher who thinks he knows what you want to see and perhaps does focus groups that I've always found to be very misleading. Focus groups will tell you what they like about something that they've seen, but they never have new vision, they never have new insight, they never break the wall and go outside the box. So I think it's much better to please your public directly via Kickstarter than it is to go through many layers of filtration over the way.
In a land where the most perverse dreams can come true, in a city where debauchery knows no bounds, in a bar where the bathroom reeks of death, one man stands alone.
The Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded is going to be a period piece. It will take place in the 80s about a guy who's 10 years out of style. But of course now the joke is he's 35 years out of style. If we did that, I think it would be too far removed. It would be your grandfather's fish out of water story, and that I don't think that would work. So the game will continue to take place in 1987, and it will have that same kind of humor. There may well sneak in some references to things that are happening current day, but it will be very subtle and spatial. Humor is hard to do. It's hard to do in video games particularly because in a book or a movie or a TV show, you have a set script that you follow so you can set up jokes and then have a punchline. But in video games, you don't know whether the guy has seen this or has seen that, and it's very, there are ways to know that. We did it, but it's very difficult to get all those things set up first and then have the joke happen. And so I think that's one reason you don't see it. Plus, video games rely a lot on repetition. Humor hates repetition. You put those two together, if you develop a game mechanic, it ain't going to be telling jokes. It's going to be, some form of action that you can do over and over and over 1,000, 1,000,000 times before you finish the game. Humor, if you hear a joke once, it's funny. If you hear it twice, it's maybe. If you hear it 3 times, it's like, what the hell? What's wrong with this game? So I think the two media are different. But I have hopes now that they will be. With Tim Schafer and Mark Crow and Scott Murphy coming back and Larry, suddenly humor is back in video games. The trend in computers, as long as I've been involved with them, which is now 35 years, has been to increased graphics, increased processor speed, increased memory. Everything always grew. But you get to a certain point where the games grow to such a size that they can only become these gargantuan, gigantic entities that have a life of their own. I think you saw, I'm going back to the film industry again because the movie business went through this. In the 1950s, these giant spectacles of films, like Ben-Hur and Cleopatra and many of these films that were just huge, weren't very good because they were so big. And I think one of the great things that is happening in the industry today is the rise of casual games. The casual games are playing a much larger role and makes it possible for a small development team to have a sudden breakout hit that where you don't need 187 animators and 32 background artists and dozens of musicians and level designers. Yes, in 1987, I predicted that in 25 years, Tim Schafer would do a Kickstarter campaign and revive the adventure game industry. No, you know, when we did those games in the 80s, we expected them to have a shelf life of a year, maybe 2. We did a revision of Larry 1 in 1991 after 4 years. We brought it out again, and it had great sales again for 4 or 5 years. They then packaged all the games into a collection, and those had good sales for years. None of us predicted any of that stuff. Hell, if I'd have known it was going to be so successful, I would have kept the intellectual property rights. Instead, you know, I signed them all away, and someone else got the money. I've been happily married for 44 years, and I intend to stay that way. You know, I was once a school teacher, and I considered part of my job to be an educator. So I tried to educate a younger generation about the problems of venereal disease. We can say it that way. How's that? When I started 30 years ago, I did everything. I did the music, the graphics, the writing, the programming, all of it. I mean, down to the point of designing the packaging and everything. Over the years, I quickly got rid of graphics. I got rid of animation and music. I got rid of programming quickly. And I got down to the point where I did almost nothing. And I found out that the less you do, the more money you make. And that's my goal now.
If you want what? Ladies and gentlemen, go for a wild, wild ride with the Watusi cats. But beware, the sweetest kittens have the sharpest claws. For your own safety, see faster, pussycat. Kill.
My influences in the early days were movies. And comedians. I tried to do things in games that were not being done. Today, there's a big tendency to do a game that's just like that game, only a little bit different. And that wasn't what we tried to do. What we tried to do was something that was completely different. Since I did a Western comedy about a pharmacist, you know, I did a children's game that could be played with an adult. I did a lot of different genres and different ideas.
Torrens Passage. Combining the hand-drawn classic animation of King's Quest VII and the humor of Lowe, Sierra takes you to new levels of entertainment.
I'm a strong believer that good games have one vision, that there is somebody who is looking after every aspect of that game. And it's possible to do that with a huge team, but it's easier to do it with a small team. And yeah, so I feel comfortable with the auteur concept in video games, just like I do with movies. I love movies that are made by a visionary, you know, and that.
Born in old St. Louis, by the age of 4, Dad knew he was the best little crack shot the West had ever seen. By the time he reached pubescence, he could outshoot all the adolescents west of Durango and north of Abilene.